I think we should get started. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this very special event combining history, poetry, and nature. My name is Caitlin Shea. I am the Events and Media Director for Walt Whitman Birthplace Association. And if you're not familiar with us just yet, we are, oh, I don't know, frozen. My internet, that's the problem. Hold on. Okay, hopefully I'm back. Okay, good. There we go. So if you're not familiar with us just yet, we are a museum located in Huntington, New York, where you can visit the birthplace of Walt Whitman, where he was born 202 years ago. You can also join us online. We have so many online events just like this on Zoom. And we love that we're able to share Whitman's legacy, contemporary poets with you all the time. Almost every week we have an event. So please continue to join us. And this event is actually a New York State Path Through History event. You'll see Andrew and everyone with him have these path stickers. So if you visit ilovenewyork.com, you'll see there's all these wonderful events that they're doing. They do it twice a year. So many museums participate, so you can get to know those museums better and have these special events. So definitely check that out. And we thank New York State for inspiring events like this. It really made us up our game as far as going outside on Zoom and finding ways to be even more engaging. So thank you to them for that, New York State. And of course, I always want to start every single event by saying thank you so much to our donors. Even if it's something small like $5 that you would spend on a cup of Starbucks coffee, for us means so much when you multiply it by all the people that we're meeting far and wide now on Zoom. And it really means a lot. I mean, it makes these events possible. We're excited to be connecting to people. Nina is with us all the way from England. And I mean, it just means so much. And we're able to connect with people and have them join us just like this. So please, if you're able to, just any amount. And of course, your presence means so much. Just being here means so much. So thank you for that. So I want to get to Andrew. I don't want to take up too much time. So Andrew's going to be taking questions. So what I'm going to ask you to do is write your questions in the chat, and we'll have a few breaks for questions rather than having them all at the end like we usually do. All right. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Andrew quickly. I know he's waiting there. Andrew Rimby is a PhD candidate and queer activist at Stony Brook University, researching 19th century literature from a queer transatlantic perspective. He is the 2019 inaugural recipient of the Giuliano Global Fellowship, a 2019 to 2020 Public Humanities Fellow, and a 2019 Stony Brook Graduate Fellow in the Arts, Humanities, and Letters Social Sciences. With Adam Katz, he co-anchors the Ivy Tower Boiler Room, a podcast about navigating academia during the pandemic. His article on teaching Whitman during the pandemic is about to appear in 19th Century Gender Studies. He is also the associate editor for the Watching Review and a board member of the Walt Whitman Initiative. All right. So Andrew has been the bravest, most experimental person with us so far, and we're so thankful for that, Andrew. I'm going to hand things over to you right now.
Thank you so much, Caitlin. Hi, everyone out there. I know so many of you. So because there is a little traffic right here in Roslyn Harbor, I'm going to only quickly run to show you the William Cullen Bryant historical sign. But first, I want to thank first Caitlin with the birthplace, Cynthia Shore, the executive director, the Whitman Initiative, especially Karen Carboner, who got me into walking tours to begin with. It all started when I first took her Janes Hill tour. So thanks, Karen. My director, Susan Shekel, the Port Washington Library, who, if you tuned in, if not, it's on YouTube. And I can always get those links for you. So my email is andrew.rimby@stonybrook.edu. I'll repeat it throughout the tour. There was a two-part lecture. One was on Cullen Bryant, William Cullen Bryant, and Walt Whitman, which is where we begin Act 1 of our tour. The next is Walt Whitman and Edith Wharton, which begins Act 2 of the tour. So it's really exciting. I actually have a surprise for everyone, but I'm not going to give away the surprise yet. I just want us to pretend that we're back in the late 1700s, near when William Cullen Bryant was born. And this first act is going to take us to 1846, when William Cullen Bryant and Walt Whitman actually met in person. But before I get to Walt Whitman, we have to talk about William Cullen Bryant. So I'm not going to talk a lot because you might not hear me. Okay. I'm running up a hill. Okay, there is the William Cullen Bryant historic plaque right outside of Cedarmere. So, we are now outside of Cedarmere, and I'm actually joined too by, if you've joined my tours before, you know my parents always accompany me as staff. So, as the crew, the technical crew, thanks Mom and Dad. And my friend Lori too, who is a Roslyn native. So thanks, Lori. Okay. So we are now at Cedarmere, and I'll show you right behind us is Hempstead Harbor. But we're not going to go into the gardens yet because I actually think one of William Cullen Bryant's ghosts may be waiting for us. So let's see what happens if I knock on the door. Okay. Let's see. There we go. We're all going to walk in. Huh. Let's see. Hello. Hi. Hi, Tom. So we are joined today by Tom Powell, the trusty vice president of Cedarmere. He has kindly decided to give us all a house tour of William Cullen Bryant's estate. So take it away, Tom. When was this house first built?
Well, the house was built in the 18th century, 1787. It was built by a Quaker farmer, and the footprint of the original house is what still exists. It was modified quite a bit before Bryant bought it, and he modified it even more after he bought it. He bought it when he was around 50 years old, 1843, and it was the first home that he ever owned. Wow. He rented places in New York City, and this was a getaway. And he could come out on a steamboat. There was a landing not far from here in Roslyn Harbor. Wow. And it took about 3 hours, which is probably about what it takes now to drive to Manhattan.
Especially on that weekend traffic, yes.
So we're standing in the hallway, which was not changed significantly from when he lived here. And we have made efforts to return several of the rooms to their original Bryant configuration and furnishings and artwork and so forth. The house burned in 1902. Bryant had been dead many years. In 1878, he passed away. And his grandson owned the house, and he rebuilt it, saving the facade for the most part. And as I say, the footprint wasn't changed. But everything else was restyled, redone by an architect. And starting with the hallway, we put it back as much as we could. Some things weren't changed. I believe the paneling along the wainscoting wasn't changed. But when we come into the first room here, which is his parlor.
Oh, wow.
This had to be returned to what it was when he was here. And we had engravings from Collier's magazine showing in detail of what was here. So some of these furnishings are his, some were from things that the county acquired, and others we acquired from donations and purchases. The wall on this side is was restored to the original from the original construction, which is, as I say, 1787. So that doesn't really match the rest of the house, but they saved it. I guess they liked it. Eventually, it was changed by his descendants. as you see it now was the way he had it for the most part. The same is true of the hallway. Although we don't have any engravings of the hallway, we have an engraving of this door and the windows, the little lights above the window, above the door. And there was a matching one in the back, but that was changed by his grandson. We go to the to his study.
Yes, that sounds good.
So the study has a couple of thousand of his books.
Wow.
He had quite a few books here and in his house in the city, and perhaps in his house in Cummington, which was another a house that he bought later in his life.
And it looks
to get away.
Very similar to Cedarmere, right?
It does, yeah. You can see the ideas repeated, like the lattice work columns in the front. In any case, these books we recently cataloged, and they were all his. And the desk was his, and several of the other artifacts. Some of them the county had made in replica, such as this chair and that chair, and this portfolio stand. They were copied from the engraving from Collier's magazine.
Wow.
So this is where he came on the weekends, and I think as he got older, he spent more and more time here. It was his favorite residence. It's what he considered his home. And he would work on poetry here. He would not do any newspaper editing out here. This was just for translating. He was proficient in Greek, ancient Greek and Latin.
Wow.
And of course his poetry work.
Because when does he leave the New York Evening Post, Tom?
The day he died.
Which, right, he dies in Manhattan?
He had made a speech in the park to dedicate a sculpture that was had just been put up to an Italian patriot, Mazzini, I believe his name was, and it's still there. But after he made a speech, it was a hot summer day, and he passed out, or fainted, I should say, on the steps of a friend's house. And it was one of these sort of a stoop arrangement where you walk up, and he injured his head, and he didn't live very long after that, a few days.
Wow.
So
and here, for all of you, I'm going to try to get up. Here's Brian's editions of his poetry works, right? I see Brian's poetical works. Oh, next to the Iliad. Ah, that makes sense. Well, him and Whitman had a lot in common because the Iliad was Whitman's favorite Homer text. Yeah, so I see a lot of comments. People want to come explore this catalog. I know. I just want to stay and live in here in the library.
we can give you the digital.
Oh, there's a digital catalog. Perfect.
One of our members.
Oh, wow.
An intern.
Oh.
Wordsworth.
Oh, thanks, Ann Wordsworth. Oh, she's the emeritus director.
Oh, Andrew, we're having a little trouble hearing Tom. It's like it has to be directly pointed towards Tom for us to hear.
Sure. Here you go.
So, as I was saying, we have a digital catalog of all the books in that room, and it was done by one of our former members, Ann Wordsworth. So the hallway is filled with a number of items that came back to from the family. They were donated to us recently. This room in here is an addition that was erected by Bryant's grandson, Harold Godwin. So are we going to take
let's take a stroll in.
there?
And when was this added, Tom?
Well, the house burnt in 1902, and then he started right away replacing it, rebuilding it, and he kept what survived of the facade, and he kept the look of the house, the same footprint, but he did make quite a few changes, and this was one of this grand room. They needed, in those days, I think it was coming, parlor was not enough. They needed a living room, or den, if you will, and music room, all that was kind of a modern concept, I believe. So he brought things from Europe, like the fireplace around, and the tiles are from Spain. The woodworking is quite elaborate, and we think it came from an old mansion in the city that was being demolished. We really don't know for sure.
I'll show some of the interior to all of you watching.
That young lady is her name was Marquand, and she was the wife of Harold Godwin. So that was her debutante painting. Her family was very prominent in New York City. They donated a lot of the artwork to the original Metropolitan Museum of Art, which Bryant was one of the founders. He was the vice president of the group that founded the museum originally.
Wow. Do you remember when the Met was founded?
I believe it was in the early 70s. I really don't know for sure.
Yeah.
It
Wow.
moved several times for its present location.
Great.
And these are family members. This was his wife as a child, and the one on the right is granddaughter named Minna.
Oh, wow.
She lived in Manhattan. This portrait came back from a descendant from England that had taken it over there. And this is painting that Harold did,
Of Rembrandt.
a copy of Rembrandt.
Yeah. How about the artwork on that door?
We don't know where those stained glass pieces came from.
Wow.
There's also a nice one over there to your right. And there's several others in the house.
Wow. The pianos. We have a few pianos.
This is a recent donation from the Myers family.
Oh, wait, and who's the woman up here?
I'm not sure.
Huh.
I have to do a little more research, find out who she was. I'm sure it's a family member.
Oh, yes, because Thomas told me that when was the last person who resided in Cedarmere?
Yeah, that was Elizabeth Godwin, the daughter. She's in this corner over here.
Oh, yeah, let's see her.
Elizabeth Love Godwin. She's the older sister. She lived here until 1975 when she passed away. And she's also buried up in the plot where all the Bryants and descendants are buried.
Yeah, anyone who wants to make the Cedarmere Mecca, make sure you stop at Roslyn Cemetery on Northern Boulevard.
It's a very, very picturesque
It
cemetery.
is. And you'll find the Bryant by this, it's almost like an obelisk.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, and can you show the magic door?
Oh, the doors here are all curtains. Very excellent craftsmanship. There's four of them, they're all pretty much the same. Two of them are closets.
Wow. Did Brian have a lot of control over the design, Tom?
We think so, yes.
Yeah.
He did have an architect, his name was Copley, and he did certain elements on the house, like there's a thing called the pear tower, which was one of his hobbies, growing pears. And he built a special structure of a Victorian style. It was destroyed by the fire.
Oh, and I'm catching a glimpse of George Washington.
Well, we think that these would have been the kind of thing they would have had on the walls. These are from that period.
Oh, I see. So it's matching the period.
Yes.
Okay.
A lot of these artifacts and artwork came from the county when they set the museum up.
Oh, because so the great grandson, right, dies here.
He died in the I think it was around 1930. But his daughter lived here until 1975.
The Godwin.
The Godwin
daughter. Okay.
but everything was changed. Everything was redecorated. They kept his desk in the house, but very little else remained from his day.
Yeah.
So you can imagine it would have been 100 years old.
And did the Godwin family decide to donate it to Nassau County?
Yes, she did. Elizabeth of Godwin.
Wow.
They were probably was somewhat surprised
Hmm.
when they found out they had
Inherited.
given it to the county.
Yeah.
But the condition was that it be kept as a museum in a park for the public to be made aware of his legacy. Unfortunately, when he was alive and in the first part of the 19th century, he was the most famous poet in the country, and probably one of the, if not the most famous authors in the country. And he inspired later poets, like as I'm sure you're going to talk about, younger poets.
Walt Whitman, yeah.
He also inspired and kind of predated the Hudson River painters
Mm.
and their subject matter, their portrayal of the American wilderness and that whole environmental, if you want to call it that, idea that Thoreau wrote about around that little bit later, because he was older than a lot of these people. So he was an inspiration, and he was very close to the Hudson River painters. The father of the Hudson River painting is Thomas Cole, and he was involved in the Cole painted his first work right about the time he came to New York, 1825. His first work that became known, that made him known. And he met Bryant right away, and Bryant very soon thereafter was working for the paper, and he was publicizing, he was talking about or publishing articles about the works of that school, encouraging people to take an interest in them. So that was his role with the artists, because everything in our culture as an American culture was starting around that time, whether it be writing, poetry. You had Washington Irving, Fenimore Cooper, and they were all in the same clubs in the city. And he was well known by everybody and had a lot of influence.
And right, he dies 1878.
78.
So
yes.
he's right, like you've talked about, his son is right at the time when the Gilded Age mansions are going to really start
He came
appearing.
before the Gilded Age, and before this area was, became known as sort of the Gatsby.
Yeah. The McKays, the Fricks, the Clays.
Whitneys, the Vanderbilts, they came later.
So we'll get to that eventually in the tour when we end at the Bryant Library, when it would have been when those mansions are appearing. So don't worry, if you're an Edith Wharton fan, she does make an appearance eventually, because she talks about Roslyn Harbor in her novel, The House of Mirth.
Right.
But
well,
yeah,
his grandson, the one that lived in this house, and his children were kind of from that era. They lived through that era, and they were involved in that level of society. But Brian was different. He started from very humble origins. That had just been, before he was born, it was still the frontier. And his grandfather had a little farm. He was born in a log cabin.
wow.
He lived there for 2 years, and then they moved into a larger house with the grandparents. And his father was a doctor. So the father was the one that brought the culture, the books, the library. He was a poet himself, an amateur poet, and he encouraged his son. Whereas his grandfather was much more austere, and he wanted him to work in field and get the farm work done.
Yeah, sounds like
So there was a bit of a conflict there.
Yeah, sounds like a Whitman conflict that we'll get to because of his farming upbringing.
Right.
Yeah. So,
but he was a little further out in the boondocks than Whitman, because the nearest city was many hours.
Yeah. Is Cummington by the Berkshires?
Yes, it's in the Berkshires.
Ah, okay.
It's one of the last areas that was developed in the Berkshires. It's up there.
Yeah.
Time to go.
Okay, so I'm just gonna do a brief recap, right? So here's the addition that Tom called, you call it like
We call it the great room.
the great room. Okay, and that was built by the grandson.
Yes.
Okay. Here is the library, right?
We call it the study or the library.
Okay, the study. It's like we're playing a board game. Okay.
Yeah,
Um,
Colonel Mustard.
yes, exactly. This is a clue. Murder mystery. Okay, and then this is
This is the parlor.
the parlor.
In the
Okay.
Victorian days, that's where you did your formal entertaining.
Yeah.
But this is a very humble parlor
Mm-hmm.
compared to some of the mansions. And this was more of a summer house, I think. I that's my own understanding of it,
Mhm.
because with the big mansions.
Almost
these-
mimicking a cottage in a way, like a
Yeah.
summer cottage,
It's not a grand house, but it's a very nice.
but it's comfortable,
very nice
definitely.
house for its vacations, summers.
As yeah, someone in the group joked, I saw that Rusty. She said with a candlestick, and I'm pointing at the candlesticks from the Clue board game. Okay, and then we're not going upstairs, but upstairs, I'm assuming were the bedrooms.
Yes.
Okay.
The two, the husband and wife had different rooms.
Hmm.
They were the biggest rooms. I think he was on this side and facing front, and she was on that side. Facing
Yeah.
front. And one of the daughters, they had two daughters facing the rear.
Oh, I had a question that I did see. Is that a piano roller? Is that a piano roller? Piano.
The player piano?
Yes, a player. No. Okay.
Andrew, we're having trouble hearing Tom. I'm not sure why. It might be like your fingers on the speaker or something. My microphone, I mean.
Here, wait. I hear some background noise. Is someone's audio on, Caitlin?
Let me check. Okay, I
Okay.
got
Okay, yeah, I heard kind of static, almost white noise.
mhm.
See, there's always, anytime we do these tours, the author's trying to come through. So Brian's making his presence known. Oh, wait, I still hear it, Caitlin.
It should be off now, Andrew. I'm not sure.
Okay,
It might be an internet thing going on here.
Okay. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you. I'm just not sure if we can hear Tom. We were just having a little trouble with him.
Here, wait. I think he should be good now. He's close to the camera.
I can't finish without mentioning his connection with Abraham Lincoln and his campaign against slavery. He brought Lincoln to New York City. He and his group invited him, and that's when Lincoln was exposed to the world, really, because before that he was an obscure figure from out west somewhere, but he sort of went viral, to use a modern term, when he made his famous speech at the Cooper Union in Manhattan, which is still there. But Bryant introduced him at the speech, and that's when the country became aware that he was the only candidate that was against the spread of slavery to the new territories, which was a major change.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think I didn't mention was his connection with Central Park. Because of his interest in preserving the environment or the wildness, or at least giving people a taste of nature, he spearheaded that movement. And I think he probably recruited Olmsted, or he had a lot to do with the selection of Olmsted to design the park.
Yeah, and right, if you've ever been to Bryant Park, that's
yes.
named after William Cullen Bryant, and his statue's literally behind the library.
It's about 50 feet tall. You probably haven't noticed it, but it's really the only park of any size other than Washington Square Park that was named after an individual when you get below Central Park.
Yeah.
And it's quite large for a park in that part of the city.
Yeah. So
His friends got together after he died and purchased the property.
Wow.
The story is that the politicians didn't like him because he published editorials that were sometimes rather scathing, and So they didn't want a statue of him or anything in Central Park. So his friends got together and created that park.
Oh, and I saw, thank you, Eric. He said he also, someone wrote that he also founded a homeopathic college.
Yes, the New York, it became the New York Medical College in Valhalla.
Oh, in Westchester.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was homeopathic medicine was very popular then. It actually had a lot of great improvements over the conventional treatments, which were leeches and bloodletting and all kinds of emetics and laxatives and things that if they didn't kill you, you would survive.
Yeah.
But
And then
they were
eventually,
very harmful.
yeah.
And homeopathic was countered all of those drastic treatments with mercury, all those kinds of treatments.
Yeah.
But the theory of it, the basic theory of it was long since discounted, although people still, some people adhere to it, but for the most part, mainstream medicine, when they discovered the diseases were caused by germs rather than humors or bad air, it fell out of scientific favor.
Yeah, he wore a lot of hats, William Cullen Bryant.
He certainly did. He
Yes.
was a Renaissance man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good segue into Whitman because that's their immediate connection, the hats they wear.
Right.
So
both in the both in the press.
Yeah.
The difference was that Bryant started earlier, and it was very primitive. You know, a couple of hundred could be printed a day, and during his tenure, it went into the hundreds of thousands per day.
wow.
And the influence of the press was multiplied incredibly. It was the golden age of newspapers.
Yeah. Oh, and I also want to point out too, to amplify this author. Am I allowed to get up to the book? Oh, okay. Oh, I'm getting behind the scenes, everyone. Oh, this is very special. I get to go right up to the book. But there's a really good autobiography, everyone.
I believe he's was a Queens College professor, recently retired, perhaps.
Yeah.
Gilbert Muller.
Oh, and here's from Scribner's Monthly, 1878, The Parlor, where we are right now, at Cedarmere.
So that's where we tried to set everything up the way it was. This was started by Nassau County, the work on this, but it was suspended and the house was emptied around 2009 because of the economical disaster.
Yeah.
And around 2014, we started, they gave us permission to bring the stuff back. And that's when the Friends of Cedarmere.
Oh, and there's a picture of Brian.
Yeah, that's by Durand, one of the famous Hudson River School painters. And then you have the most iconic
Oh, yes.
Hudson River School painting, which
Is that Kindred Spirits?
that's Kindred Spirits. Brian on the left, Cole the painter on the right. He had just died, and Asher B. Durand painted this
Wow.
in memory and gave it to Bryant. It was here until after his death. His daughter gave it to the New York Public Library, and it was eventually sold to Crystal Bridges in Arkansas.
Wow.
But it has been back to New York a couple of times recently.
Okay, so I think Tom is now going to take us outside so we can see the gardens, and you'll hear from Brian himself. I'm going to read a few of his poems. So let's go outside.
All right. Just to let you know, Andrew, the internet's like a little bit dicey right now. So I'm just gonna make sure we can hear you and everything out there.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just gonna walk down to the gardens.
So far, so good.
Okay, I'll show you the, is it called a porch, Tom? Porch. Okay, I'll show you the porch. And if you've known,
This was added by the grandson.
oh, it was so the grandson who also added the great room.
So you see the railing down here is neoclassical from 20th century, and upstairs,
Wow.
all that is Victorian.
Okay, so
that's-
neoclassical at the bottom, Victorian at the top.
Right. But as soon as you hit the first floor, scanning across, that's all for the most part, Bryant's
Wow.
period.
And I'm assuming that the balcony comes
Balcony?
out from the bedroom.
Yes, that's his bedroom right
Ah.
there.
Let's see if we can see him, folks.
So, and Mrs. was over there.
Ah, and okay, and his wife's was over there. Ah, because they had to have separate bedrooms. Okay. No, but yes, it worked for them. Okay, so we're heading into the garden space, right?
You
Okay.
want me to go, keep going?
Sure. We're gonna end. Tom is going to part ways. We're gonna end at there's a little engraving of Bryant, right, in the corner.
Yes, it's a sculpture done by his grandson.
Sure.
Harold Gothic.
Okay, we're gonna see the sculpture, everyone. Oh yes, thank you. Eric reminded, and I'm sure Tom will remind us that Cedarmere, right? This is all open to the public, the outside.
Every day of the year, dawn till dusk.
Ah.
Free parking.
Free parking, that's a good
Usually the
plus.
house is not open now, but a special arrangement.
Okay,
Now that we're opening up again with COVID
wonderful.
regulations.
Okay, so if you're really interested in what you just saw on the video, go to friendsofcedarmere.com, right? .org. Friendsofcedarmere.org, and you can book a private tour. But yes, the grounds are beautiful. I've seen people eat here. I saw people reading.
We have weddings.
Weddings? Oh, there we
have
go.
all kinds of ceremonies, memorials.
Oh, and here,
cultural, performances.
sorry, Tom.
We've got a couple actually coming up.
Okay, so here's the porch.
So that was all created by Harold Godwin, the grandson.
Wow.
Oh, we're having trouble hearing Tom, Andrews.
Oh, we're not talking, Caitlin.
Oh, okay.
It's good. You're on top of it. Oh, sure. Yeah. What is this, Tom?
This is the Nassau County recreated this garden. This was designed by Bryant himself, and it was, I'm sure, from a European model. It's called a parterre. It's got these geometric boxwood plantings. The other garden over there was, I don't know who designed it, but it was made by Harold Godwin, the grandson, probably around 1920.
Wow.
And it's called the Sunken Garden, which was popular then.
Okay.
And if you want to see the sculpture he did of his grandfather, that's in there.
Yeah, let's see the sculpture. There we go. Ah. We're about to see his grandson's sculpture, right?
Yep.
Of Bryant. Is it just me, or does it look like Homer? Right?
It's sort of like Whitman, too.
Homer, Socrates, Whitman. Yeah, Whitman, those I know who are Whitman fanatics, we all know that Whitman had a bust done of his head. It looks very similar. Wow. Huh. Maybe Whitman and Bryant are related and no one has cracked the code. Okay, so I think this is where we're gonna have to say bye to Tom, but I think there might be some questions for you. Oh, so Caitlin, is there any question for Tom before we head down for the poetry reading?
Well, I see one question. Are there cedar trees on the property? Rita Rose is asking.
Trees? Yes, I'm sure it was Nassau County was responsible for that. They planted a number of them around the pond, and we've been planting them here and there too.
Okay.
They're native to the area, so they pop up by themselves.
Wonderful.
Great.
Any other questions? Everyone a second. Eric Swanson.
Oh, yes, that's where we're heading, Eric. He's good. He knows where we're heading. To the Gothic Revival Mill. Eric Swenson. Do you know Eric?
Yeah, he's on the board.
Oh, hi, Eric. He's on the board of the Friends of Cedarmere. Sounds like I think I know him.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you so much. What a treat we got to see inside today. We weren't expecting that, so we're so thankful. I'm just thinking, I hope this is the first of many collaborations with Cedarmere. I mean, we'd love to.
That would be wonderful.
Wonderful. I'm so glad that we got Tom here Tom, I will, you know, catch up with you later.
All right.
Thank you so much. And we are now going to head to the Gothic Revival Mill. Okay,
I
thanks.
just want to leave you with
Yes.
the quote we got from Whitman about this place was that it's very cliffy.
Yes, very cliffy. Yes, and
You'll
he,
see that as you walk up.
and he mistakenly calls it Mosquito Cove, but Tom reminded me, as I know, Whitman sometimes mixes up the oral history that becomes myth for him. So Mosquito Cove is actually Glen Cove.
That's right. It's a couple of miles down the coast.
Yeah, but we'll get to when Whitman talks about the wealthy Gilded Age families here. He has a few choice words to say about them. So we'll get to that soon. Okay, so now on to the mill. Bye, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Tom. Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. It's a true country afternoon. Okay, so let's head, we're gonna head down this way. There we go. Thank you again. That was such a treat. Okay. Yes, as Caitlin has talked about, this is a meeting of many collaborations. And yeah, Tom, you can join if you want to. Yes, you can hear the poetry. I think Tom's going to join us, so we might not have lost him. Okay, so let me just show you what it looks like from the other side. I want you to see the harbor. Ah, there's a greenhouse. Let's see, there are people picnicking. You can do that here. Oh, there's the house. Ah, Eric said you mostly maintain the grounds by yourself. Ah. Tom said you're exaggerating, Eric, but he accepts the compliment. Wow. So we're heading to the Gothic Revival Mill. Yes, Rusty, there's so many trees. She sees birch trees. Yes. Oh, I have a question. Are dogs allowed on the ground?
Yes, on leash.
Yes, on leash. Okay. This is done by Nassau County and the Friends of Cedarmere, the mill and its restoration. Between 2008 and 2013, the Roslin Landmark Society and Gary Charitable Trust founded extensive work on this 1862 mill to restore its structural integrity and its ornate Gothic Revival exterior. In 2020, the Friends of Cedarmere began additional work on the structure. Oh, so very recent. Okay, within the year. The water wheel will be used to power machinery still inside the mill. Wow. So there's still machinery inside the mill. I had no idea. Wow.
Upstairs is a summer residence.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
a
there's
summer
lots of
residence.
structures all around is 200 acres, and I think it was 180 to 200. And I think there were 15 houses on the property,
Wow.
but this one was close to the main house.
Were these for guests?
Yes, upstairs was guest, downstairs was the workshop with lathes and saws and a water pump so they could have running water. That was very important.
Wow.
Before this, there was an old mill that was much more primitive and just used for manufacturing. They had a fulling mill which processed wool cloth as part of making it softer. Then there was a guy making cabinets. I guess you had saws, a glass cutter. That place burned down when Bryant owned it.
Wow. Yeah, thank you, Tom. Okay, so Tom is giving us a second act. We appreciate it. Yes. Oh, and thanks to Bob Sargent too, who I've met with. Oh, and Ned White, if you're out there too, thank you. You both have been really collaborative. Wow, so here is the pond, everyone. Oh, there's a cedar. Yeah, this is truly a gem. If you've never been here, run after the tour. You can come after the tour. Okay, I'm gonna get us into a shady spot.
Where is this exactly?
Oh, it's in Roslyn Harbor. So
What road?
south of Seacliff. Pretty sure. Tom, what road is Cedarmere on? Bryant Avenue. Yeah.
It's along Bryant Avenue.
On Bryant Avenue.
Okay.
Yeah, if anyone who's come to Roslyn Village, you bear a right when you get off the exit from before the viaduct. So don't go over the viaduct. Take that exit to the right to come down into the village, and then you turn a right. And it's shortly after that.
Andrew, did you see Eric is saying there's a bald eagle nest nearby?
Really? Oh, wow. Eric said there's a bald eagle nest nearby.
Somewhere around this harbor.
Ah, somewhere around.
Don't go back to where
Okay.
somebody touched that.
Okay, well, I'm going to do some reading on top of this bridge. Whew. That's a walk. There you go. Okay, I'm going to switch off the camera. So 1 second, everyone. Let's fall in. That's the end of the tour. Just kidding. Hey, can you hear me, Caitlin?
Yeah, we can hear you pretty well. Just could the camera be pointed down a little more toward you? All right, that's pretty good there.
Okay. We're going to stay pretty steady. So thanks to my father. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. My dad is currently helping with the camera. Okay. So now I'm going to read in 1842, Whitman wrote a poem in dedication to William Cullen Bryant. This was actually 4 years before he actually met him when, like Tom has already told us, Bryant worked for the New York Evening Post as the editor-in-chief for his entire life. So Whitman started to contribute to the New York Evening Post. That's how they actually met, in the Manhattan office. But before that, Whitman knew William Cullen Bryant's poetry because Bryant was so popular and well known. So this is from 1842. It is called To Bryant, the Poet of Nature. Let glory diadem the mighty dead. Let monuments of brass and marble rise to those who have upon our being shed a golden halo borrowed from the skies, and given to time its most enduring prize, for they but little less than angels were, but not to thee, oh, nature's own. We should, when from this clod the minstrel soul aspires, and joins the glorious band of purer lyres, tall columns build, thy monument is here. Forever fixed in its eternity, a monument God built, 'tis seen around in mountains huge and many gliding streams. Wherever the torrent lifts a melancholy sound, or modest flower in broad savanna gleams. Very un-Whitman-like. If you've read Whitman's Leaves of Grass from 1855, that does not sound like a Whitman poem, but it does sound like a Bryant-like poem, which makes sense because Whitman was doing a very classical poetic style, which means you imitate the poet that you most admire. So he's imitating the way that Bryant's poetry would have sounded. And when I think of him describing a monument, not only can you see Cedarmere in the back, but the Roslin Cemetery, he literally has an obelisk-like monument. He's not dead yet, so this is some foreshadowing that's going on. And if you know, Whitman had his own monument built when he died in Harley Cemetery in Camden, which also is a very grand monument. Whitman really liked grand monuments. Okay, so now I'm gonna read, especially because I'm by the pond. This is from 1818. If you are a William Cullen Bryant admirer, fan, this is probably the most quoted poem. It's called To a Waterfowl. So here it is. Whither midst falling dew, while glow the heavens with the last steps of day, far, through their rosy depths, dost thou pursue thy solitary way? Vainly, the fowler's eye might mark thy distant flight to do thee wrong. As darkly painted on the crimson sky, thy figure floats along. Seekest thou the plashy brink of weedy lake, or marge of river wide, or where the rocking billows rise and sink on the chafed ocean side? There is a power whose care teaches thy way along that pathless coast, the desert, an illimitable air, lone wandering, but not lost. All day thy wings have fanned at that far height the cold, thin atmosphere, yet stoop not, weary to the welcome land, though the dark night is near, and soon that toil shall end. Soon shalt thou find a summer home, and rest, and scream among thy fellows. Reeds shall bend, soon over thy shelter nest. Thou art gone. The abyss of heaven have swallowed up thy form, yet on my heart deeply have sunk the lesson thou hast given, and shall not soon depart. He who from zone to zone guides through the boundless sky thy certain flight, in the long way that I must tread alone, will lead my steps aright. So that is To a Waterfowl. And I will leave us with one more poem. And then we're going to actually take the tour back up again when I'll get into the issue of abolitionism and the difference between Bryant and Walt Whitman when we are in Roslyn Village, because a lot of the buildings in Roslyn Village start to come Civil War and after. So it'll make more sense with the scenery. Okay, so here is Midsummer. This is from 1826. A power is on the earth and in the air, from which the vital spirit shrinks afraid, and shelters him in nooks of deepest shade. From the hot steam and from the fiery glare, look forth upon the earth, her thousand plants are smitten. Even the dark sun-loving maize faints in the field beneath the torrid blaze. The herd beside the shaded fountain pants, for life is driven from all the landscape brown. The bird hath sought his tree, the snake his den. The trout floats dead in the hot stream, and men drop by the sunstroke in the populous town, as if the day of fire had dawned and sent its deadly breath into the firmament. Thankfully, we do not have a midsummer like that right now. But I wanted to show you the contrast between Bryant's themes. He can be both naturalistic, expressing his admiration of the waterfowl, and he can also delve into the toil of the souls of men under the torrid hot sun. So I think we see where Whitman started to gain his inspiration from and why he was known as quoting that Bryant was the poet who he learned the most from when he was starting to learn how to write poetry. Okay, so now it's an exciting moment. We're actually going to walk back to Cedarmere, and then I'll explain our intermission. Okay, I can take it. Thank you. Trying to see if we can find the waterfowl, but I don't know. Any waterfowls, Tom?
Definitely, there's a family of mallards and with 10 ducklings somewhere. They can make their way over to the other side of the pond. And, formerly the daughter's house, now it belongs to somebody else.
Because there are still private residents, right, around here.
Over there, at the other end of the pond,
The other, okay,
past the second bridge, is another.
okay. We're not going to disturb the private residents. Okay. So as we walk back, and right, Caitlin, can you hear me when I'm just showing the scenery?
Yes. Sounds
Okay.
good.
So as we walk back, we're actually going to head right into Roslyn Village. So I've left us on the cliffhanger of what is the difference between Whitman and Bryant's views of abolition. And they are quite different and stark. I'm also going to read a quote from Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth to get us in the mood of the Gilded Age and the high society. As Tom explained, Brian's grandson really started to become absorbed in the high society life. So we are down the hill from the Nassau County Museum of Art, and that was the Child Frick Estate. So I'm sure the grandson knew the Fricks, but there were so many families. One of my favorite stories is actually the estate has been demolished, but if anyone has heard of McKay Publishers, the McKay family was right up the hill in Roslyn Harbor. And the McKay daughter actually married Irving Berlin, the Broadway composer. And there was some tension with her father because a high society Protestant was marrying a Jewish composer. Even though, of course, Irving Berlin had means, it caused a rift. But eventually, I think the family reunited. So I've always wanted to pitch that as a Hollywood movie. I think it would be very intriguing. Also, a movie about Bryant and his legacy, just like how I think there should be a Whitman biopic. Okay, so we're gonna make our way up the hill. And as I'm walking, are there any questions, Caitlin? This is a good time.
No questions in the chat, but if anyone wants to unmute and ask a question. I think we're all just so taken in by all this beauty. We're not even thinking of questions. We're just enjoying it all. Beautiful.
It is. How large? Well, that's a good question, KB. Because where the Nassau County Art Museum was part of the Bryant land. Here, I'll turn around. So Bryant's land extended all the way from here at Cedarmere, the preserve, all around the harbor. But actually, if you look behind me, where Bryant Avenue is, that's a hill up there. The Nassau County Museum of Art is up there. There's actually a way I've been told you can hike to the art museum. I haven't done it, but if you've ever been to the art museum, there is William Cullen Bryant Preserve there, and there's all these hiking trails that I actually took my parents to yesterday. And my friend Lori, who's with us here, we loved walking back there. It's beautiful. It's also free. There's a sculpture garden that you're actually going to see soon because I took some footage, and that's our intermission tree. We're going to take our intermission soon. Caitlin is going to play the videos that I took of the art museum, and thank you to the director there, Dr. Charles Riley. He gave us permission, so you get to enjoy the sculpture garden. I went around some of the pieces. I definitely didn't capture all of it. It covers the whole ground. So in regards to how large are the grounds that William Cullen Bryant had, it included the Nassau County Art Museum. It also included all of the preserve back there. So his land was very large. Tom is coming. So I'm gonna ask him, Tom, do you know how many acres Bryant's land was? Wow, approaching 200 acres. Wow. Almost like half of Roslyn. Wow. Okay, so he had 200 acres almost. Wow.
We got some.
Yeah. Yeah. So how many? 7? 7 acres at Cedarmere. Okay.
But it's next to, you can cross the street and go into the.
Oh yeah. So Tom told me there's a way to get to the art museum. So you
have to go to our south parking lot down there.
Okay, so you go to the parking lot that's south of here. Closest to Roslyn Village. Okay.
Across the street carefully, there is an opening in the fence. You know, there's a gate that's open.
Wow. Okay, so any of you who want to do the hiking, you can come from here to the art museum. And it is just so beautiful. Again, hopefully I can do this tour again and have a lot of you in person. So hopefully next year, let's do it again.
We couldn't hear Tom. Where exactly is that pathway so we can go from Cedarmere there up to the art museum? We couldn't hear Tom because he wasn't with the camera.
Right. Well, if you go to our little parking lot, the one that's the closest to Roslyn, it's the entrance to the other side. You cross the street and there's an entrance there. You'll see a kind of a beaten down pathway, and there's it's an opening in the fence. And then the trails on the other side are very well maintained and moderately easy grade, even though it's quite a steep hill. And you can go see there's a historic house at the top that was Bryant's. It's called Dewey Cottage from around 1862. Same architect as our mill, and the same architect as our neighbor to the north.
Great. Okay, well, now this is our official goodbye. So I'm going to say bye, Tom.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Caitlin, I think it's now time for our intermission. So I'm going to go on mute. I'll see you all in Roslyn Village.
All right, excellent. See you soon, Andrew. All right, so we're continuing our adventure, the pre-recorded video here. See. There we go. And everyone sees that, right? It's coming up. Okay, good. Just always want to be sure.
Hi, everyone on the tour. Welcome to the intermission. I am now outside.
Audio disappeared.
Sorry about that. Did someone have a question or something? I heard something and it stopped it.
I'm sorry, I just say that the audio went off.
Oh, it
Right.
went off. Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, because I muted my microphone. It's all these little silly details here. All right, let's start again here.
Hi, everyone on the tour. Welcome to the intermission. I am now outside the Nassau County Museum of Art, which I wasn't able to do live for you. So I'm recording this a few weeks ahead of time. Thank you to the Nassau County Museum of Art for allowing us to film. We appreciate it. Thank you to the director, Dr. Riley. So I'm now standing at the what was Henry Clay Frick's estate, and then eventually his son, Childs Frick's estate. It was built in the 1890s, and Childs Frick lived in it until around 1963. He lived here until his death. Actually, I think it's 65. So now it houses the Nassau County Museum of Art. I can attest, I just came from a Belle Epic exhibit, an Andy Warhol exhibit, which I think is still going to be on display by the time you see this, so definitely go and visit. And now I'm going to take you around the sculpture garden. So as you're watching this on this Sunday, we have some nice animal life, but also here is one of the sculptures on the tour that you'll see. It kind of reminds me of that game where you put that metal ball through and try to get it out on the other side like a maze. And we're now in the back of the mansion. Well, I guess the side technically. And then I'll just show you, if you actually go inside the art museum, here's another incentive for you to visit. You can stand on the second floor and actually see this exhibit. The sculpture pieces out there, I'll point, that look like mirrors, and they start to change direction when you're walking. But when you have the perspective from the upper floor, it's quite an optical illusion. You know, so perspective matters. Okay, and I'm gonna make my way down so you can see this other sculpture closer. Here is Rubin Nakian's Hiroshima sculpture. And then you get another different perspective of the optical illusion. And there's the estate. Okay, now I'm gonna make my way to the other side. And because of editing, you won't have to see me do this walk. So enjoy what we're gonna encounter on the other side. Oh, here's a nice park bench too, if you wanna read. Okay, I'm now on the right side. I think I can zoom in. Oh, I can. Here's the lightning bolt sculpture. I also want to really thank my Google Pixel phone for this technology. I'm very impressed. Here's another piece. Let's see, I'll have to zoom out. Oh, there's a woman on a bicycle. That kind of looks like a watermelon slice or a piece of pizza. You can see I really lucked out with the weather today. So hoping for the same weather that I have right now in May. May we be experiencing nice weather as you see this in June. It's kind of cool to archive your time this way. Okay, we're gonna make our way to the last section of sculptures. Monopoly, anyone? That's what I always think when I see this piece, but actually they kind of look like minions now that I'm looking at it. Okay, here's this other really enjoyable piece. Looks like a Cirque du Soleil family. Okay, and then I'm going to show just one more sculpture. And then when you see me next, I will be at the start of the walking, the William Cullen Bryant Preserve, it's called, for the hiking trail. Here you go. This is almost a very mummified sculpture. Another really pretty sculpture. It's just so peaceful. Oh, I think we're missing a sculpture here, but maybe later. Here's another incentive for you to come back. You can see Chaim Gross's Caring. I mean, I guess we could still interpret the void as a type of caring. Caring of nature. Okay, on to the hiking trail.
Forgot about him.
Yeah, you could just hear Lori, who you've met, forgot about, because Lori grew up, as she probably already told you on the tour, or I've told you now, in Roslyn. So she knows these sculptures intimately. Okay, so actually, let's just take you on the tour. Oh, I think these are the muses or the fates. Very Parisian meets Greek mythology. It's beautiful. If you've never been here, really, it is so beautiful. Ooh. It's a little grotto. Here we go. Seems like a swimmer or another dancer. Very beautiful. And you can see this is all nestled in the woods. Okay. On to the garden. We are currently now, and when I say we, I mean Lori and I, because she was my fearless guide throughout all of this, on the William Cullen Bryant Preserve Trail. We're only going to do a little of it, but I will get to the point where you can see the harbor, Hempstead Harbor. And you've already seen it because you've been to Cedarmere through this virtual tour. So now you're seeing it all the way up on the hill. So we're now climbing down the hill. But think, at one time, this was all William Cullen Bryant's land, from the Art Museum to Cedarmere, which is a very expansive amount of land. But what's nice is that Nassau County has still preserved this as hiking trails, and it's free and open to the public.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and Lori said beautiful. Yep. Yeah. And I can attest, I've become Long Island's ambassador for walking. Okay, so in the distance is Hempstead Harbor. Below us would be the town of Roslyn Village, or I guess it's just the town of Roslyn. And yeah, welcome to William Cullen Bryant's preserve, but also area as he would have seen it in the 1800s. Okay, and now we're going to come back to the live tour where I should be greeting you in the town of Roslyn. And you're going to see some of the historic sites there. So hope you all enjoyed this little intermission. And again, thank you to the Nassau County Museum of Arts. And come and visit. Okay, bye everyone.
Right, wonderful. Oh, and I see Andrew, perfect.
Hi, everyone. I'm back. That worked really nicely.
Good timing, good job.
So I'm going to keep the camera pretty close at the beginning because of traffic, but it's not that bad. It's not, if you were with me with Huntington Village, that was a little more intense. This is actually the Roslyn Village Post Office. So what I'm going to do is we're going to walk a little because, of course, this is our Roslyn Village walking tour now. And I'm going to actually stop at what used to be the Roslyn grist mill. It's under a lot of renovations, so unfortunately, the grist mill isn't exactly in the shape of in its historic shape. So they're actually currently doing a really major renovation to it. So soon, hopefully in a few years, it will be back up and running. So once I get to the grist mill, I'm going to talk a little more about William Cullen Bryant's ideas about abolitionism. So come on, let's go through the village. As they would say, let's go to town. Okay. And also, if anyone had any questions about the Nassau County Art Museum section, feel free to put it in the chat. And I'm serious about doing a Long Island walking tour channel. I really feel we should have a Long Island history channel. I will definitely volunteer. And anyone who wants to join me, let's do it. Okay, so this is the village. There's a place called Gatsby's Landing behind me. Yes, after the Great Gatsby. I will talk a little about the Great Gatsby because the Great Gatsby actually just got into the public domain, which means it's now free to access online. And it will actually work well when I talk about another anniversary. This is Edith Wharton's 100th year of winning the Pulitzer Prize. There's a really beautiful ice cream place here called YOLO. So, I get it. You only live once. Okay. No, it's a good name. Okay. See, I'm learning a lot on these tours too. Okay. The infamous Roslyn Viaduct. Right here. So this is, as you can see, a major renovation happening. This is the site of the grist mill. Okay, and we're gonna do some reading here. It says, Roslyn grist mill, built between 1715 and 1741. Here, wait. Let me face it. There we go. I might not be able to say it, but I'll show you. This rare surviving Dutch framed watermill operated for over 150 years. And then it served as a tea house from 1920 to 1974. So, were some of the Roaring Twenties crowd coming here for tea? Probably. Maybe William Cullen Bryant's great-grandson, who got into the Roaring Twenties life. And then eventually we're going to be going up a hill when we get closer to what's locals called the Duck Pond. I might even have Lori, who's a Roslyn native, jump in eventually to tell her history. But let me show you. This is a really cool sign. It says Roslyn Mill Tea House. But this says 1701. So, you know, I am assuming I've looked it up a little. This also was this building right here. It's gonna be hard. You know what? I'll be okay. I'm insured by the birthplace, right, Caitlin?
I don't know about that, Eric.
I know. But yeah, this is a very old colonial home from the 1700s. I think this was also a tea house too. This is all from the Roslyn Historical Society. So thank you to the Historical Society for this. Some really, really cool image here of the viaduct. I think this was when it was first built, right? How old is the viaduct, Lori? No. Oh no, they're new. Oh, this is new. Okay. Yeah, how old is, you don't know? Okay. If anyone knows how old the viaduct is, I'd be curious. Okay, so here are all of the Roslyn Landmark Society's historic places. Let's see. Cedarmere Mill. Check. We were just there. Okay. Yes. There is the Dewey Cottage. That is, oh, thank you, Bruce. He said viaduct built in 1949. Great. Thank you. The Dewey Cottage is actually where Tom said you can see was also part of Bryant's land. And that, I think, is as you're getting closer to the Nassau County Art Museum with that trail. So There's that. Oh, the Roslyn Gristmill Tea House. Oh, wow, from 1920. This is what it looks like. Okay, so that's where I just showed you the gristmill going under renovation. The tea house was literally out on a balcony. Okay. The Warren Wilkie House. Ah, the McKay horse statue from Harbor Hill. Harbor Hill was the McKay estate.
One time the statue, there, I don't know if it was a copy of, there was, the original was in front of the Roslyn High School.
Oh,
In the
here, say it.
circle.
Say it, Lori, say it. Here, welcome, Lori, the Roslyn native.
So growing up in Roslyn, that particular sculpture was also in front, in the circle, the bus circle of Roslyn High School.
Wow, okay. So yeah, and there's the Harbor Hill. Lori, actually, I asked to see this and she showed me. This is the gatehouse from what was the McKay estate that got demolished. So all that exists now is the gatehouse. And that's the family I said the McKay daughter married Irving Berlin, the composer. And being from Jersey, there's a really cool story where they went to Atlantic City to perform. He performed different Broadway music selections in Atlantic City on the boardwalk in their summer house, which I'm assuming is actually in what is called St. Leonard's Tract in Ventnor, which is a very historic place. So everyone go to Atlantic City too. Maybe that's the next tour, I don't know. I'll hold my horses right now. Literally, because we're gonna actually pass a horse statue eventually. So, okay, we're gonna continue walking. Okay, we have to see what's up the hill. There is the famous Roslyn Clock Tower right up the hill. So let's go. Let's see it in person. Okay. We're making our way up the hill to the historic tavern. This is where George Washington stayed, actually. And Lori knows a little more of the history, so I'll ask her when we arrive. It's actually now a private restaurant, so I don't want to invade too much. But yeah, this is the historic tavern, Hendricks. So you can kind of see in the distance the farmhouse, some of the farm homes, and here's the tavern. But like I said, it's now a private restaurant, so feel free to come. I've heard the food is really good. Yeah, oh, we're gonna walk. So I know Lori has some history now about the tavern.
So at one time, it was called George Washington Manor. I don't know the dates, maybe that somebody online can look it up. And George Washington supposedly slept here. It then turned into a pub in the 80s, and now it's this lovely, lovely restaurant called Hendricks. It has a nice outdoor patio, and the inside it's beautiful inside, very antique and rustic and giving a wonderful charm that aesthetically is wonderful for Roslyn.
Yeah, we're gonna come back to Hendricks Tavern eventually.
And then also,
oh yes,
the wonderful Roslyn movie house. As a child, I had seen many movies there. They have very artsy movies. And at one time, if anybody remembers the movie, The World According to Garp with Robin Williams, they filmed at this movie theater.
Okay, so The World According to Garp filmed at this movie theater in Roslyn. Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
See, it takes a lot of collaborative partners here. Okay, we're now gonna cross the street to head right to the tower. And if anyone knows more history about the clock tower, I feel like it's something from the 1920s, but someone else might know. Oh, crossing. And there's so many cute little stores. Yeah, if you live on Long Island and never have been to Roslyn, you need to come. It is so nice. And it's actually really quiet, like compared to some of the other downtowns. Especially, you know, I love Huntington Village, but Huntington gets very busy. I love all the downtowns. I don't make judgments, but this is a really cool sign. It says Roslyn Historic District, Main Street. In this block stand 37 structures built between 1690, wow, and 1865. And then here's the clock tower. And oh yeah, there's a really cool saying here. It says, in loving memory of Ellen E. Ward, she died in 1895, to whom Roslyn and its people were dear. It's hard to see dear. She fell asleep. Oh, she died. Okay, January 18th, 1895. If anyone knows the Roslyn Landmark Society, yeah, some of the wording is falling. So, you know, I'll work with the Roslyn Landmark Society. But here's the tower from this side. Here's the view of the cinema from here, the movie theater. You can hear the train in the background. Oh, Manhattan is always beckoning. So we're going to actually now walk to the duck pond, which will lead us right to William Cullen Bryant Library. But I'll first stop at that statue we were talking about, the horse statue. So the horse statue, I'll do another reading. I'm going to read William Cullen Bryant's poem called The Death of Slavery. So like I said, William Cullen Bryant was an abolitionist. He wrote out against slavery. And I think since yesterday was Juneteenth, it's really important to note how passionate he was to advocate against slavery. Oh, also, the Jolly Fisherman is another staple of Roslyn. It's a really good steakhouse and seafood restaurant. Oh, Lori said it's her parents' favorite restaurant, so check out the Jolly Fisherman. It's good. There's so many businesses here. Oh, let me show you. There's a home up on the hill. Wow. So yeah, and here's another historic farmhouse. The new and the old really mix into Roslyn. Its history is really well preserved. Here's the hill. We're gonna have some really stunning views soon. Another house.
Maybe Lori can speak about those homes. I don't think that they can be renovated without, I think those homes are protected for historical reasons. Maybe Lori can speak about that.
Lori, are the homes protected?
Yes, because they're in a historic district. This is a Naylor speaking.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that's what Lori said. Thank you. Yes, so because they're in the historic district, they can't be renovated, you're saying?
They can be renovated inside. It's the exterior.
So similar to Williamsburg, Virginia. They're very protected in Williamsburg. Wow. Well, I'm glad that they're protected because they are stunning. Yeah, like the homes. So we're on the sidewalk right now. You know, these are from the 1800s. I think some are even from the 1700s. So we will be at the statue soon. But like I was saying, this is the 100th anniversary. In 1921, Edith Wharton won the Pulitzer. She was the first female author to win the Pulitzer Prize. She won for The Age of Innocence, one of her infamous Gilded Age novels. And most of her novels, if you've read Ethan Frome, is very popular in high school. My favorite is The House of Mirth from 1909. All of her novels are really set in the 1860s, the 1870s, the 1880s. So the reason I brought up The Great Gatsby is it's written only a few years after 1921. And F. Scott Fitzgerald is writing in the time. He's writing about the Roaring Twenties, right? He's writing about the new and old money clashes. Edith Wharton continues to return back. She keeps returning to the turn of the century. She's really interested in the tension of the upper society and like what's about to, the new money families that are starting to arrive. So if you've ever read The House of Mirth, Lily Bard, the protagonist, she comes from a high society family. However, she lives with her aunt and she starts to lose her social standing because of gossip, because of stigma. And Edith Wharton, it's just, I love the soap opera-ness of the shame, the stigma, the society life. It's, I really recommend the BBC dramatized all of her novels. So you can actually go on Audible and probably your public library and listen to it dramatized. It's been wonderful. I think I just finished The Custom of the Country and I'm now on Ethan Frome. Okay, so let's see, I'll just walk. I'm gonna show you the statue. Okay, so I'm just gonna show you up close the statue. It is very impressive. Okay, let's get to the front. Okay. I'm gonna walk up to the plaque so you can learn about it. Okay, so as this tells us, right here, the Harbor Hill Estate and the McKay horse statues. As Lori already told us, in the 1950s, the North McKay horse statue was relocated to Roslyn High School. Until 2010, the South McKay horse statue stood in its original location, rising above the house. Okay. Then Bruce and Melissa Schulman donated the statue and pedestal to the town in 2009. And then in 2010, it was relocated here to what's called Gary Park. So that's where I'm now at. I'm at Gary Park. And here is the aerial of Harbor Hill Estate. That's what it looks like. And the statue was right here. Right here. Okay. Oh, and I should also mention Harbor Hill was designed by no other than Stanford White. So a lot of history.
And Adam, I think the family pronounced it Mackey Estate. Clarence Mackey made his money. His father made the money in silver, and he was in the telegraph and telephone business.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Mackie. It's good to know.
Interesting story about Mackey. When he was sick one time, a physician came to treat him. His wife, Mackey's wife, ended up running away with that physician.
Oh, wow.
Just a little historical footnote there. Money can't buy everything. His wife took off with the physician, and that was that.
Yeah, the Mackey family had a lot of eccentricities happen, and they didn't play by the rule book of society. They're one of the families Edith Wharton would have really, maybe she based a lot of her novels off them.
Catherine Mackey, his first wife, was also an important suffragist for women's suffrage.
Ah, thank you. Yeah, as was William Cullen Bryant. Another distinction, when I say Walt Whitman wasn't a suffragist or an abolitionist, he never openly declared the category. So yes, do his poetics contain suffragist themes? Do they contain abolitionist themes? Of course, but he never declared it in a political way like William Cullen Bryant did. And I also want to note, you all saw Cedarmere, and Tom explained how William Cullen Bryant grew up on a farm in Cummington, Massachusetts, like Whitman, who grew up in a farm in West Hills, Long Island. You know, both families were from farming families. However, Walt Whitman goes into the newspaper business, becomes a journalist. William Cullen Bryant goes to law school, and he becomes a prominent lawyer in Manhattan, and then becomes the editor-in-chief of the New York Evening Post as he's publishing poetry. So Bryant starts to gain and amasses a lot of wealth. So that, I would say, that is a big difference between him and Whitman. Okay, we're gonna actually settle soon. I'm gonna do my final reading right by the library. So I do want to show you though, because when I saw this during planning the tour, I was, the history was so shocking that Hempstead Harbor, its first white settler founding, right? The Matinecock tribe, and it says here too, the Woodland Indians, but especially the Matinecock Native Americans, they were all in the Hempstead area. They all settled around Hempstead Harbor. But 1643, the first white settlers come. That is very close to when the white settlers come to Plymouth Rock. So this is a very old settler community. It says the creation of Hempstead Harbor happens around 20,000 BCE. Okay, that's difficult to register. Settlement by the Woodland Indians. The Native Americans came here around 3000 BCE. The Dutch trading ships didn't come till 1614. So, you know, I think it's always important, especially as we're learning more about Native American history, I really recommend a book called Tragic Encounters. Tragic Encounters is about the Native Americans in the Northeast, that they were here in the before Common Era period. So they were here for thousands of years. Important context. And here it says the Matinecock Indians were decimated by disease in 1650. Well, that and also from fighting with the white settlers too. So we know there was not a lot of peace treaties being kept with the Native Americans. Okay, and now we're gonna end in our final spot. Okay, we're gonna walk to the Bryant Library. But yeah, there's a nice gazebo. This is also a beautiful park. We really struck out, Caitlin, on a gorgeous day.
I know, Andrew, I keep thinking the same thing.
We've been lucky so far.
I know, fingers still crossed.
Yes, yes. Okay. So if you're from Roslyn or from the area, you know that this is the William Cullen Bryant Library from the 1880s. So here is the Bryant Library. I have been inside. It is simply stunning. There is a reading room, and the reading room has William Cullen Bryant, some of his library collection. So if you ever want to come here, they are so accommodating. And I did tell them about this tour. They said, please reach out to the Bryant Library, reach out to the reference librarian, and she will get you into the reading room. Lori and I had a very private experience there, but it is open to anyone who's interested. Okay, we're gonna settle in the shade. It's getting a little hot. And this is a really, really historic sign. The Bryant Library, the oldest continuing public library in Nassau County, established in 1878. Yeah, and someone else who loved public libraries was Walt Whitman. He went to the first public library in Brooklyn around the late 1840s into the 1850s. So I love public libraries too. The library is where it all happens. And here's another very historic building. Okay, so we're gonna conclude soon. I promised you the reading of The Death of Slavery by William Cullen Bryant. So I will do that. So this is from 1866. Bryant writes The Death of Slavery for the magazine The Atlantic. And this is just one stanza. I see the better years that hasten by, carry thee back into that shadowy past, where in the dusty spaces, void and vast, the graves of those whom thou hast murdered lie. The slave pen through whose door thy victims pass no more, is there, and there shall the grim block remain, at which the slave was sold, while at thy feet scourges and engines of restraint and pain motor and rust by thine eternal seat. There, mid the symbols that proclaim thy crimes, dwell thou a warning to the coming times. So Bryant knew that he writes this right after the Civil War. So this is starting to go into what we call the Reconstruction period of the antebellum. I mean, not the antebellum, I'm sorry, the postbellum. The antebellum is before the Civil War. So Bryant anticipated there was going to be a lot of racial reckoning. And I think we can be safe to say there's a lot of discussions right now about systemic racism, reparations for African Americans. Juneteenth just got recognized as a federal holiday, right? And Juneteenth, I'll read just a little section about that because it's fitting with Bryant's poem that was done in 1866. Okay. So this is 1865, Galveston, Texas. General orders, quote, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. So as this is by Henry Louis Gates Jr. If you don't know who he is, you should. He is an incredible Black historian and also literary critic. He was the one who got Harriet Jacobs' autobiography back in the popular press. And he's very well established in 19th century literary criticism. He says, when Major General Gordon Granger issued the above order, he had no idea that in establishing the Union Army's authority over the people of Texas, he was also establishing the basis for a holiday, Juneteenth, June plus 19th. Today, the most popular annual celebration of emancipation from slavery in the United States. So, Bryant writes his poem, The Death of Slavery, a year after this proclamation. And now, I promised that we would get into the 1920s, and we will. So I explained about Edith Wharton winning the Pulitzer Prize. If you don't know, Edith Wharton, born and raised in New York City. Her home was near Chelsea. And she also would vacation in Newport, in France. She stayed in France a lot. And then I actually get to visit this next, in 2 months, the Mound, which is her country estate in Lenox, Massachusetts, in the Berkshires, which also is not far from where William Cullen Bryant's other country home is. So I'm gonna find just the quick quote from the House of Mirth. And if you didn't know, the Gilded Age, does anyone know where the Gilded Age term comes from? Be really excited with this history.
Mark Twain.
Yes, good. Mark Twain and Charles Dudley Warner wrote The Gilded Age, a novel. So it was called, let's find it here. I think it was called A Tale. Oh, here it is. Yeah, The Gilded Age. In 1873, Mark Twain and his friend in Hartford, Connecticut, wrote this novel, and they were trying to satirize, as Mark Twain does, the period. And they said in this novel, it is a time when one's spirit is subdued and sad, one knows not why, when the past seems a storm-swept desolation, life a vanity and a burden, and the future but a way to death. So they did not see this excessive materialism in a positive light. Whitman also said in 1871, in Democratic Vistas, his essay, that the Gilded Age is a quote, in America, mighty many-threaded wealth and industry, period. And that it is masking a dry and flat Sahara of the soul. So again, Whitman didn't necessarily have positive things to say about it, but, you know, like I said, Whitman did really evoke and was inspired by these classical allusions that Bryant was alluding to from mostly ancient Greek literature. Okay, and here I'm just going to find the quote. Okay. So this is in book 2, chapter 5. It comes from the House of Mirth, and Lily has fallen out of her society, so she's not able to vacation abroad in Europe. So what's the solution? Let's see. This is from her friend's suggestion. So, quote, they've taken the Van Alstyne place at Roslyn, and I've got carte blanche to bring my friends down there. The more the merrier. They do things awfully well, and there's to be rather a jolly party there this week. She broke off, checked by an undefinable change in Miss Bart's expression. Oh, I don't mean your particular set, you know, rather a different crowd, but very good fun. Okay, so the different crowd is, this is more of a new money family. So they aren't necessarily connected to the old money, high society, long lineage lines of family. So, you know, there's some gossip happening in this section, but I love that it mentions Roslyn. Okay, and I did promise The Great Gatsby. So because it is Pride Month, I have a Great Gatsby Pride Month edition. Also, my parents and I are doing an extended vacation in Nassau County. So I want you to know that this is a private house, F. Scott Fitzgerald's home, where he wrote The Great Gatsby between 1922 and 1924. But if you look up F. Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby house, you will be able to see where he lived. And I'll give you a clue. It's behind a shopping center right in Great Neck Village. So you can drive by it. I was really excited. I am obsessed maybe with The Great Gatsby, but also with what it says about social class dynamics, and especially tension between social classes and with income inequality. I mean, there's so many layers. The exploitation of laborers, for example, too, with the Valley of the Ashes, even just that pejorative term for it. So here we go. This is Nick Carraway, our fearless narrator, explaining Jay Gatsby. If personality is an unbroken series of successful gestures, then there was something gorgeous about him, some heightened sensitivity to the promises of life, as if he were related to one of those intricate machines that register earthquakes 10,000 miles away. So a lot of critics, myself included, I'm teaching The Great Gatsby and The House of Mirth first, then The Great Gatsby, and then Nella Larson, who's a prominent Harlem Renaissance writer, her novel, Passing, and then we're going to read The Vanishing Half that was just written by Britt Bennett to talk about all of these themes going on: social class, systemic racism, income inequality. It all comes to a head in The Vanishing Half. So I recommend that book too. But so many critics think Nick Carraway has a homoerotic, but even a very sexual and romantic attraction to Jay Gatsby. And I definitely think he is very, very eager about Jay Gatsby. So that theory, that analysis is definitely there. And also, I highly recommend the 1970s film version. I just recently saw it, and yes, I think it's a little better than the current new one that was done a few years ago. But that is the end. I thank you all. I thank my parents and Lori and Tom, the Nassau County Art Museum, Cedarmere, the Whitman Birthplace, the Whitman Initiative, all these collaborative organizations. Stony Brook University too, thank you. This is now our Q&A. If anyone has questions, please take it away.
Well, before we jump into Q&A, Andrew, I want to just come back and say thank you so much, Andrew, for all these connections you brought together. I can see from the questions, like a lot of people haven't visited these places that live here on Long Island, myself included. I've been lucky enough to go to the Nassau County Museum of Art, but I didn't even know there was more to it. You told us that secret pathway we could take to get over to the house, so that's amazing too. And I also want to thank your wonderful companions there. They're spending their Father's Day with us.
Yay!
Thank you so much to your parents and to Lori for the great history that she brought too.
Yeah, she's a good guide.
Yeah, she really is. She does so much off the cuff too. So if everyone could unmute for just one moment, we can give a big round of applause, big well-deserved round of applause to everyone that was involved today.
Yay. Excellent.
And Andrew, yes, you're just so creative and you bring so much to us. This was an even bigger adventure, so I just love to see that these are growing and growing. So thank you for that. So if anyone wants to, oh, and we have Indrin with us here, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Yes, and you were speaking so wonderfully about like present day, racial conversations that we're having. And at the birthplace, we had a James Baldwin program that Indrin led for us. And we have some people here today. We have Ellen and Bob with us who are also part of that conversation. Andrew was part of the conversation. It was a reading and discussion group that met weekly. So we're so happy to be able to do that and have these Pride Month events that we've been having. It's this one in particular as well. So wonderful. Okay, I want to allow time for questions. So, and Indrin, hi.
I just want to say thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Caitlin. What a wonderful show. I mean, I learned so much, and there's so much more to learn. I just have to get over there and walk these places you've just shown us. Really a thrill. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Indrin. Yes, definitely. Let me know when you come. I'll meet you.
All right, sounds good. Great. Congratulations. Okay, not a question, just praise singing.
Oh, thanks, Indrin.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If I can, not only Naylor, if I can just add one more historic spot. If you had continued down that street before you turned down into Gary Park, you would find the oldest house in Nassau County, Van Nostrand Starkin's house that dates from 1685 or so. And
Wow.
it's a museum, occasionally open.
Okay, thank you. Oh, hi, Natalie Naylor. Oh, she is the infamous and well-established Long Island historian. So thank you, Natalie, for that. Yes, let's, the Van Nostrand house, you said?
Yes.
Okay. The Van Nostrand family. Okay.
It's
It's a very old Dutch family.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalie.
You're welcome. Thank you for the tour.
Ellen has a question, I think.
No, oh, just Andrew, that was amazing, wonderful. Oh my God. And I'm a retired English teacher and I loved teaching House of Mirth and The Great Gatsby. And a few months ago, I read The Vanishing Half. I love your teaching schedule coming up. Enjoy. Your students have a big treat coming. It was excellent.
Thank you, Ellen. Oh, it's so wonderful to be an English teacher.
Yes, it was amazing. It was a fabulous choice. I got to live my dream. Enjoy.
Also, thank you, Ellen. Oh.
We also have a comment in the chat there. Melinda John says, thank you for the laziest, most sightseeing walk I ever took. I didn't even
It is, it's good. You can just, let us do the walking and you can enjoy the sights.
Exactly.
Yep.
Andrew, this is Rusty. I love the walk. I cannot get around good. And so to be able to walk with you and everyone was absolutely wonderful. And also, I think that clock tower, I'm not sure, but I think that Mrs. Ward, I think her name was, I think it was built because she had two sons who died in the Civil War or something like that.
Wow.
So you have to check on that.
Yeah, let's check it, Rusty. That's our assignment.
Yes, I loved it. I'd love to go on all the tours with you, but I can't get, there, but I loved this. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to thank, not only are you across the pond, right now, but thank you, Rusty. She also is going to contribute. She contributed poems to the Ivory Tower Boiler Room. So on the Stonewall anniversary, we're going to be featuring Rusty's poems and links to her websites where you can get her poems. So the last week of June, it's almost here. Time is moving. Thank you, Rusty. It's always great to see you.
You're welcome. Happy Pride and,
Happy
to
Pride.
everyone. And
Thank
I may
you.
have I don't know if I sent you 2 poems to do with Walt Whitman. I'll send them to you anyway, but this was wonderful.
Thank you, Rusty. Oh, yeah. Rusty is so kind and you have the best heart.
Oh, thank you.
Rusty, send those Walt Whitman poems our way too, please.
Oh, okay, I'll
There
send
you
them
go.
to Andrew and then he'll,
And I'll send it to you, Caitlin. Don't worry.
Thank you. And we have the links in the chat. I just want to point those out too.
Yeah.
Andrew shared, I had the links for the museums that we saw earlier. If you scroll up, you'll see those. And we have one for the Walt Whitman Initiative, which Andrew's a board member there. And the Ivory Tower Boiler Room, which is Andrew's podcast with Adam Katz. It's amazing. Definitely check that out.
Yeah, Caitlin has 2 parts, so you should listen to her episodes.
Thank you, Andrew. Oh, sorry, just Andrew, what is the other link? Talking back to Walt Whitman using a queer of.
Oh, that link is my first peer-reviewed journal article about using, putting James Baldwin, Langston Hughes, Toni Morrison, and bell hooks in conversation with Walt Whitman about expanding ideas of race and unearthing systemic racism as an approach with my students that I did last year. So it's a journal article, but it's for teaching. So it's more accessible. Yeah.
Oh, excellent, excellent.
It's free. It's free too. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Making everything so accessible to us. It's amazing. And then the African American Museum of Nassau County. Another museum I wasn't familiar with. Awesome.
In Hempstead, yes. So I need to make my way over there. So if anyone wants to join me, I really want to go to the African American Museum in Hempstead. So that's a trip I'll do with anyone interested. Yeah. Yeah, they're very wonderful there with all of their exhibits. Yeah.
And we're talking about hybrid tours soon, maybe in the fall. Can have people join us in person and on Zoom like this. Don't worry, you don't have to walk necessarily, but it's an option. So that's really nice.
Wonderful.
Anyone else want to jump in with questions or comments?
Yes, I want to make a comment about Walt Whitman was very much from New York. Brian was from New England, but he grew of age in New York and had a tremendous association with New York. At the same time, I wanted to point out that New York City during the Civil War and prior to the Civil War was not an abolitionist town. Draft riots, there were riots when Lincoln spoke at Cooper Union, and they stood out and were connected in a number of different ways on the question of just New York City itself, and also the anti-abolitionist or let's say anti-Lincoln sentiment and anti-union sentiment in New York City itself during the period.
No, thank you, Andrew, for that. That's important context of how New York City was itself very divided over the union causes too. Yeah, it's important context. Thanks for giving us that perspective.
Yes, not the New York we know today, for sure. Very different. All right, anyone else want to jump in? All right, well, I want to say thank you so much, Andrew, and to all your companions today, thank you. I'm going to let you get to your
over there.
celebration.
Yeah, we're enjoying the shade right now.
Yeah, you need it. I'm sure. It's about 80 something degrees out here on Long Island. So
yeah, luckily we have a breeze, so we're not too bad. Yeah. Right. Well, thank you all. It was so great to see all of you, and thank you again, Caitlin. Keep that ship going.
Thank
You're
you.
the one driving that, driving the ship in the harbor. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, Captain, my Captain. Yes.
There we go. That's you. That's you. Thanks and it's so good seeing all my friends out there. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And I hope to see all of you again very soon. We have a lot of great events coming up. So please stay tuned. Stay on our social media. We love getting all your questions and comments on there too, and sharing more Whitman with everybody and other poets too, like today.
Yeah, I'm sure there will be something in the future with me in the birthplace.
Yes.
I have a feeling.
I have a feeling too.
I have a feeling. Okay, well, bye everyone.
Bye.
Have a great
Bye.
Sunday. Happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
too.
You're wonderful.
Thank you. Beautiful. Excellent.
Bye bye.
Bye.
See you soon.
See
See you.
you.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Caitlin.
Amazing.
Caitlin, bye, Caitlin. Bye. Bye, Ellen. Bye.
Bye, bye,
Bye.
bye,
Bye.
Adrian. Bye, Andrew. Bye,
Bye,
Caitlin. Bye.
Andrew.
Bye, Ellen. Thanks for being
Bye.
here. All right, I'm cutting it off.
Yeah, bye, Caitlin.